Hi everyone, I'm Angela Silva and I'm a visual artist and printmaker and artist bookmaker, and I'm based in Talisay, Negros Occidental. I retired to the Philippines from the United States, and while I was in the States, I took many workshops in printmaking. That's after I moved from digital collage into printmaking. So when I moved here, I brought my etching press. It was really my intention when I retired to Negros that I would do more printmaking. So that's my passion now. It's an advocacy, and I'm also a collector of prints.
Hi, my name is Maya Muñoz, and I'm a painter and most recently a printmaker. I am from here, Bicol region. This is where I grew up until I was 10, 11. From 11 onwards, I was in the United States. I came back to the Philippines when I was 29, 30. Moving here has made me become more methodical. Living in this area, this is the typhoon belt. So how that influenced my method or the way that I work right now is it has turned me into a planner. So there are certain things that I can do when it's sunny and things that I can do when it rains a lot. When I say that, I mean the process of printmaking.
For the sake of the viewers, can we just back up a bit and talk about just printmaking in general as a medium? What is printmaking versus digital printing versus so on?
Yes.
So I'll go back to the basics, and there's relief, which everybody might be familiar with, which is carving out like rubber stamps, wood cuts, and lino cuts and rubber cuts. So you carve it out and you leave the image, and that you ink. And printmaking always involves a matrix or a plate that's worked on to make the image. And then you apply ink with a brayer or with a brush, and you apply pressure, paper, or fabric, and then you lift it up and you have a print. And everything is in reverse, and there's pressure, and there's so many variables that we control. The second process is called intaglio, which is based on etching and engraving, making incisions where the ink will go into. And with a lot of pressure, which is usually provided by an etching press, the ink is lifted off onto a damp paper and the image is printed. Then there's the planar. Planar meaning a single plane. And you may have heard of monoprinting, monotypes, the most painterly of all the printmaking processes. Then you have lithography, part of the planar process, and that's where oil and water don't mix. And that's very classic printmaking too, and you may have heard of lithographic prints. Then there's also stencils and pochoir and chincole. Those are all different things that we do to the image. Lastly is actually serigraphy, silkscreen, and stencils. It's applying ink and pulling it across the screen.
So how did I get into printmaking? Because Angela she's a pusher, you know. She saw one work that I was doing, which was somebody had commissioned me to do a piece of something that already existed, and I don't do things twice. And she's like, oh my God, how can you do something that big, which is woodcut? And pretty much that's how my print adventure started. I decided I wanted to develop my photographs. And these are not photographs that I just took. These are photographs that I've had for 5, 10, 15 years. Photographs that I've been using over and over and over again as references for my paintings. It triggered something between the idea of print and photography and printing.
It was during the pandemic, and we were just talking about what we were doing. And then you said that you were taking a lot of photographs. I remember that. And it was the series that you showed me about the couples dancing. You told me the story about this dance hall.
I wasn't even thinking of silkscreen at that point.
No.
I just wanted to take I wanted to take the pictures. That's it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in my head, what you were telling me was that I could see these couples dancing. And then you said stories too about your tita and her friends. I mean, it was very, there was a narrative, there was a story, and I thought that, you'd explore it some more.
Stories, yeah.
So then we were talking about, how would photography capture something? Would it be series? Would it be storytelling? And then all of a sudden, somehow we got to talking about our inspirations, image making. We talked about Ronnie Horn.
Yeah.
And then you also talked about, Sally Mann. And then you and I were just starting to riff back and forth about what images to choose and work on.
Yeah, I wanted to print the photos that I've had for a while. It just exists online, right?
Yeah.
On my files. But I don't really see them as how I saw them like when I look at my computer. Like there was so much more potential to that. Like I could tell a better story if I was able to mess around with it a little bit. Yeah.
How was that for your whole body of work for Drift and Vapor? How did you get that whole body of work made?
I started screen printing last year, 2022, just to see how it works. I had to stop because I was unhappy with the results. So when I finally decided I wanted to get back into it, right? I decided, well, it's nice and sunny, so now is the time to reclaim screens and start putting emotion and exposing. 80% of the images that I exposed, none of them made it to the show. A month before everything was due, I changed from acrylics to oil and cold wax medium on paper. So I needed something that would retain that kind of, it's alive, it's there. It can be malleable still if I wanted to. Everything that was in Drift and Vapor, I did in like 2.5 weeks. So I was exposing nonstop. The picture was a picture that I took when I was taking Steph around when she came here to do the write-up for the show. So I decided I was just gonna go with that set of pictures that I took that one day. Those are the images that I went with. The process of making the screens, it's basically like a screen mesh, anywhere from 120 to 180 mesh, and it's stretched over either an aluminum frame or a wood frame. I'm using wooden frames. I coat the screens with emulsion, and I have images which I have color separated. So basically one image is separated into the 4 colors that it's made out of: yellow, cyan, magenta, and black. One image is 4 screens. I expose it. My exposure time, 3 minutes and 20 seconds. For one emulsion, 8 minutes and 11 seconds for another kind of emulsion. I have to let the emulsion dry for like a day. So once I coat the screens with emulsion, I put it away and I expose the next day. Once I expose it, I have to wash it out. And once I wash it out, just to stop the developing process, I take it out and I start to spray out the image. You render the image by spraying it out. But once that's done, I leave it out in the sun for about 30 minutes for it to cure. And then when I'm done, I print. I do all of the exposures in one go. And that's it. Simple. Process and method aside, for this show, Drift and Vapor, I wanted to convey the atmosphere of laziness and leisure. There is a heaviness to it as well that I find interesting, this paradox of leisure and weight. Also, in the way I printed the works, I wanted it to have an ambient sense of play, something that drifts in and out like a slow dream or a peripheral memory. You cannot quite catch it. It is fringe-like, unreal, and very hard to hold on to. The reason I settled on screen printing is definitely out of necessity. What was available to me here, what can I order easily, what can I build. Also, because like I did a little bit of research on screen print, especially not so much the screen printing that's being done in the Philippines, because more screen printing that was done like in the 1950s for mass consumption, for posters, and postcards, and they were able to render a photograph quite well. Yeah, and this is like the 1950s. So with the technology that we have now, I figure I I can actually like print my photographs using this particular medium, this method of working.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I really discovered that there wasn't a community in Negros and I had to reach out. But what I learned and saw from printmakers who were actively practicing, they were making do with available materials. They're so good, they're so talented, and printmaking has been here in the Philippines for over 75 years as an association. I think the major inspiration for screen printing really on a fine art basis was really Robert Rauschenberg and Andy Warhol. Okay, they began with it. Robert Rauschenberg also with cyanotype printing, and it was all imagery. I mean, he appropriated images from news. Meanwhile, Warhol, we know Warhol appropriating, celebrity images, and then making screen prints out of it and raising it to that level of, pop art and fine art. So that was the start of, in a way, that part of silkscreen serigraphy, fine art printmaking. It's easy to get actually substitute inks and stuff here in the Philippines, but that's for artists. I mean, student grade, like if you're just trying and testing it out. But to try and make artist grade, that was a challenge, right?
Yeah, well, I think okay. I know Rachel was asking me like references, right? I would love to say these guys, but not really. I mean, I reference them in terms of the stuff that I do not want to do, not the stuff that I want to do. Because like my references were actually photographers, and I was pushing the technique towards that end goal, a screen print, which is like black and white or a colored photograph. So and the stuff that I've seen of Warhol and Rauschenberg were nothing close to that. They were single screen halftones. Some
They were appropriated. They were appropriated.
yeah, and the ones that looked like closest to photographs were not even screen prints. They were transfers. They were transfers from, like they were already printed on paper and transferred onto canvas. What I want to do is more like what photographers do, like how Sally Mann printed her works. I'm talking about specifically a set of photos that she did of the Civil War battlefields. So it was more just to be in that place where all of these horrible things, this bloodshed.
You're talking about a visual. You're talking about a visual style, right? A visual mood.
Not so much like initially I think the mood of it, but her works can be very, very, very dark. And what I like about her works is that they are photographs, but they're like abstract paintings to me because of how it was printed. But the best part was she was allowing mistakes to happen and working with them, notating like how these things happened, and then not like repeating it, not too much, repeating it just when it was necessary. And she was trying to tell a story, so she tried to take the picture as perfectly as she could, print it as perfectly as she could, but there's still mess ups because of like the particular technique that she was doing, and that kind of told the story. I mean, to me it did. Yeah, they were beautiful. I don't know if too many people know about those works, but those are the ones that really got me.
Then how did it get you into screen printing specifically? as printmaking.
Because I don't have an enlarger. I can barely work a camera, right? So, like, good luck to me trying to do that colloidal thing.
How do you contrast it with your painting?
Painting is immediate. So, not much planning involved. So, sometimes I have an idea and then I do the painting and it's done. Sometimes I just start with a mark and then I have something. Printmaking, because of the time involved in preparing to print, you tend to think more about what it is that you want to do and why you're doing it. I'm like a hacker. If I was not a painter, I'd be a computer hacker. But I'm a technique hacker, right? To try and get something to look a particular way so that it's conducive to the story that I want to tell or the mood I want to project. Screen printing, you're working with something wet that can be malleable for a minute, 30 seconds. So, and I'm a painter. I cannot let paint just stay. I will have to move it around in some way. But I don't want to use a brush. Because once I start using a brush, then it'll become a painting. It's no longer print or like trying to render a photograph. Yeah.
So you're saying that instead of picking up brush and painting it, the pulling and the pressure, putting the print, pushing the ink through the screen onto a receiving surface was something new to you. And you started to break the rules. You and I talked about it. You knew basic screen printing. I know basic screen printing. And you and I had a lot of conversations like solving, not problems, solving challenges. Because you would say...
Yeah, those are fun.
Remember, we would either we would reverse engineer something we saw on YouTube. I would send you a link. This is it. And you say, no, not yet. But then you would go and try it. And then later on, you'd come...
I would reverse engineer it in my head.
But in that sense, it was like, not in a way like I was trying to give you some things to check out if it would help you. And you went back to your studio and you just messed it up and you just got what you wanted. And then later on, you would say, I got to show you this. I got to show you this. And that was breaking the rules. And for me,
I'm not really trying to break any rules, Like, I want to stick with the rules because, I mean, they're there for a reason, right? But it's like when you're trying to mix something. Like, you're trying to mix, like, a household cleaner and you're minus one ingredient, right? There.
Yeah.
So, you have to find a way to substitute, which is either just as good or better. I prefer better. Yeah.
And that's the situation here in the Philippines. We don't have access to the easy artist grade materials. And a lot of the printmakers here that I really admired, they kept doing what they could have. They could, they could use and they could afford. That in my parlance, in my awareness, I would call expanded printmaking.
Yeah, I think number one is I needed to find a surface that can receive the paint. Yeah. So once I figured that out, like how to prime canvas a certain way, that worked. And then if you finish here and there, like, oh, I can actually use paper if I do this. So that's the oil and cold wax medium that I'm using, which I like to use oil and cold wax medium because I can manipulate it better.
You mentioned before that you didn't want hard edges, and the way that cold wax medium could help you blend layers was really spot on.
Yeah, it can accept many layers, which is what I do. So where normally I think a screen printer would do like one layer of the CMYK or one layer of the halftone, I would do like 5 or 6.
I can accept that. Definitely, the process is really part of how the image would turn out, and it is a lot of maybe thinking ahead, composing, testing, several variables, and not as easy as just making a mark or a brushstroke. But yet, almost anything that you would do in drawing or painting or sculpture, there will be a matching printmaking process. What's so great, and you know, you and I have talked about it, we can mix processes in printmaking. You know, we can do a relief print and an intaglio print, and we can silk screen over a monotype, a gel print. That's what's so good too about knowing the techniques and the processes. So, you know, welcome to the wild, wonderful world of printmaking.
My next body of work in terms of this, it's going to be print. Technically, I want to work a little bit more on the actual prints that CMYK is meant for, which is colored prints. The series that I'm kind of like collecting images for now is going to be a series called The Beauty of Men. So there will be a lot of men in it. As a painter who's doing this, of course I have Angela. Thank you, Angela, for being my print Yoda. And so when I have questions about print, she's there to help me with her vast knowledge of printmaking. And also Wawi Navarrosa and Stephanie Frondoso, because both of them are very much ensconced in photography. Wawi Navarrosa being an artist who does photography, and Stephanie Frondoso, who does a lot of curatorial work and is really well versed on photography. So anytime I had questions about photography, they were always there to enlighten me. So these guys, thank you so much. I would like to invite everybody to come and see the Drift and Vapor show. It will be up from October 5th to November 4th. If you're interested in print, this is a show that you should see. It's another take on printing and photography and painting through the mind of a painter. So please come. Thank you.